so these beautiful women, I'm going to actually ask y'all to self-introduce, just a quick little nugget about you, be it something that people want to know what you like to listen to, where you're from, a little bit about your career, because I think we all can just focus on the presentation, and y'all have robust careers, but we'd love to know something personal about you and kind of, get into it.
Hi everyone, I'm Amanda White. I work at Amazon Prime Video. I've always worked in kind of media space, and so it's cool to be on the entertainment side. Something fun about me, I'm actually expecting twin girls right now. So they actually are the best at conferences, so round of applause for them right now.
Hi everybody, my name's Tanya Masad. I am co-head of research at Warner Brothers Discovery now. It was Warner Media until about a month ago. Something fun about me, I'm from Mexico City, so don't let my lack of accent fool you. I am from Mexico.
Hi everyone, I'm Megan Lau. I'm a director of consumer data science at Microsoft. I have a bunch of interesting fun facts, but I'll give you two. I'm from Anchorage, Alaska, and I am a champion hula hooper.
All right, so I will not be hula hooping, but I will watch and cheer you on. But this is awesome. This just shows you so much about these ladies. We all know things we can see, but it's all about the things that we can't see. So welcome, welcome, welcome. So we're going to break some ice. It's also hot in this room, so it would like to be a little icy in here, just a little cooler for whoever's running that. But let's break some ice with y'all. Not breaking water, okay?
Okay,
all right.
I'll do my best.
Does work-life balance exist? I know we talk a lot, especially y'all know I'm very involved with WIRE. I'm here representing women in research, and we talk about it all the time. So does it exist? Yes, no, maybe so. Why or why not?
I think work-life balance is a choice. So I think it exists if you make it a priority in your life. I think it's a value system. So I've been in places where I did not make it a priority in my career and thought that it was the place, not the choice. And after some time at a new place, the same thing happened. So I truly think it's about prioritization and really realizing what's important and putting work in its place.
That was a good answer, and I'm going to steal a little bit of it. I think it's definitely a choice, and I think sometimes forcing functions in life can help you establish work-life balance. For me, it was definitely becoming a mom. I didn't think work-life balance existed until I had a baby, and I realized I can't do, all the work I want to do all the time. And then for me, it was just really about setting boundaries and just meeting the expectations with my manager, who was super supportive. The other thing I did, which really helped me, there were a lot of people I admired within Microsoft at the time who I thought were doing just like kick-ass work and also seemed to have it all together, and I knew they weren't working really long hours. I talked to them about their strategies and tried to implement some of those, and it sounds cliche, but work-life balance takes work, but it's worth it.
Yeah, I would just add, when it comes to work-life balance, sometimes we think like it's all on us to figure out, like, how do I make my work and life balance, like work. But I find like partnering with people, so it may be your manager, it may be your peers, just having those transparent conversations, that's when it's really worked for me. I'm so lucky to have a manager that says, hey, like you have to be okay first before we can get research done, before we can get any projects done, right? And so they prioritize our work-life balance. And so having that partner and trying to figure it out, you don't feel like it's such a lift on yourself.
Y'all are such researchers. Y'all see they didn't give me a yes or a no, right? They gave,
Yes.
All right, so for y'all in the audience, I'm going to flip it to y'all. Who believes work-life balance exists? Like there's no right or wrong answer. Yeah, we got some people. All right, then I've heard work-life integration. Who believes that more so? Okay, so we got half and half of the respondents in the room. There we go. All right, so just wanted to get y'all involved. All right, so let's get into it. This is the failure panel, not because we are failures, but because we turn those failures into wins. So I'm so excited to talk about this. If you could think of a singular failure, now these ladies are all senior boss chicks in their field, so I know you all have robust careers, highs, lows, everything in between. We've seen recessions, we've seen wars, we've seen the dot-com boom, we've seen cookies, just kidding, no cookies, tagless, as we just found out. So y'all seen a lot of change. Or is there a singular failure that you're thinking like, yeah, that's the one that really propelled me forward, or that, ooh, y'all better not ever do it again?
I have many failures under my belt that I'm proud of, but one in particular, I think of a situation where I was asked by a senior leader to try to do kind of this quasi A/B test, quasi marketing research experiment with a database I was running at the time. And in my gut, I thought, this probably isn't going to go well, but I said yes anyways. I wanted to be a team player, and it took a ton of grit, blood, sweat, and tears, and we ran this experiment, and we were so excited for the results. And of course, we want to keep our growth mindset hat on, but it was this huge amount of work across many different departments, and the net gain was like $20 in revenue. I just remember reporting that back and thinking I should have stuck with my gut instinct. Not only was sort of the experiment a failure and not being able to hopefully generate the revenue we wanted to see, but also was a failure on my part because I could have led more of a speak up culture and said, hey, I don't think this database is a great fit for this project that you described to me, and that would have saved the company money, time, and myself some mental anguish. And so that's been a great learning. And since then, I really try to celebrate failures, and also I will share that story with anyone who asks, because I want to prevent folks from doing the same thing when something doesn't feel right off the get-go, to question it.
I'll share one of my biggest learnings was relationships, the importance of relationships. I know a lot of people talk about that, but I lived it in my career. So I work in Hollywood where relationships are everything, but I worked at very sort of structured CPG firms where it was a lot more about research first and research driving the milestone. And even in those environments, a lot of us have worked in an environment where the ad agency is the enemy. And you as the researcher have to give the bad news about the ad not performing well. And I learned in my career, when I was used to being in that role of judge of advertising, that the agency wasn't listening. And the general manager, I worked at the time at Neutrogena, and the general manager of Neutrogena gave me really incredible advice. And she was a champion of mine, so I really trusted her opinion. And she said, every time you and your team speak about the ad results, there's a collective groan in the room from the ad agency of like, ugh, here they come again, ruining, our dream. And, and she said you have to really look at the value of research isn't just the work. It's also how you deliver the insights. It's how you partner. It's how you build trust and build those relationships with your stakeholders. And that was a massive lesson that has actually served me very well. On the entertainment side, we deal with a lot of content makers who, it is truly their baby. It's their creation out of their own head in terms of a TV show or a movie or whatever it might be. And having that understanding of really letting them know that you're in it with them and that you want them to succeed, and that the feedback that you're giving from an insight perspective is only there to help potentially make it even better, but that you are their advocate too, has really served me well. And it came through a hard lesson of getting hard feedback. But I've always remembered it, and it's served me very well to think about the relationship and building that trust and taking the time versus assuming analytically that the data is all that matters, and it just doesn't.
So my mistake actually came as a newbie in the research world, where I was so excited to finally, research was my goal. I was in college, I got introduced just a little bit, and I was like, this is what I want to do. And so I was excited to finally be in a research role, but I was a research department of one. And so I didn't want to tell anybody no. So I'm accepting all these projects. I can do this, I can do that, not recognizing that, we all know that, you want to provide good quality insights back, right? You want to add value, and when you're taking on so much, it's really hard to really do that. And so I'm taking on all these projects. Projects are getting delayed because I'm trying to keep up with everything. I'm working with 3 different departments, fulfilling research requests, and my biggest mistake was just recognizing that knowing when to ask for help, knowing when to set boundaries. And I look at it like, hey, I did that earlier in my career, but it has taught me to kind of do that check when I'm doing that now, almost 15 years in. Like, am I taking on way too much? And I really try and encourage like mentees and people that I work with to make sure they're not making the same mistake that I did.
I love that. And what I'm hearing from y'all is self-trust, self-advocacy, and just knowing your shit. If it's wrong, it's wrong. And just being able to say, hey, this is why I don't want to do this, or we should look at it different. And for me, I'll share my failure, because Amanda mentioned mentee. So she's my friend-tor, I guess is the title. We started as a mentorship relationship, and I remember I, too, was at an agency, first and only researcher. They don't even have a research position anymore after I left. And I just remember just always just crying about money. I'm like, y'all, I'm making like $68,000 a year. I got an MBA. At this point, I had like 7 years of experience. Like, why can't I just move up? I don't understand. And I did this 35-slide go-to-market strategy. I'll never forget it. I worked on it for 3 months. I don't know if you remember that. And I'm like, oh my God, like, okay, I'm hyped up about it. I got my folks in, my sponsors in that sold on it. And they basically was like, you can either just deal with the job we hired you for, or you can bounce and we'll take care of you. And for me, that failure propelled me into two things. One, I'm a full-time entrepreneur now. I create my own realities, and I can create the environment that I want for my team and my vendors. But also, it led me to create a brand, happyresignationday.com. If you don't like that job, or if it's not providing what you need, or you need that mental health, kind of check-in while you're on the job, then hey, here it is. And it came from failing to the point where it's leading us to the next question: mental health. I don't know if anyone cares to self-identify, but we've had a long 3 years, and for those that have been through this before in different ways, a long life in this industry. So how many of y'all that do want to self-identify struggled with, your mental health regarding failure and people saying no, or maybe harsher words than that? Am I the only one? Maybe? Okay, come on, transparency. I love that. I love that, because I know it might be awkward for some of y'all, especially if you're sitting by your boss. But I get it. It does. Failure can really mess us up in the head. So when you fail, I would love to know, how does that impact you all mentally, emotionally, professionally? And I know we do have a very nice roundness of experience. Did that change more so in the beginning, middle, or end of your career? Or is it something that you still kind of struggle with when failing?
Yeah, I'll go. I'll say, I'm an overthinker. I think in the work world, we call that being analytical. But like personally, it's like, when do you cut it off, right? Like, it's amazing at work where we're able to look at so many different perspectives. But when I failed in something, it's a great thing to sit back and say, okay, how did this happen? How do I improve it? But sometimes I can I don't know how to cut it off. Like, I just keep thinking like, okay, how did I do this? I should have caught this, And I can be really tough on myself. And so it's just that self-awareness, and know that it's easy for me to do that. So like, how do I snap myself out of it? I lean on people, again, asking for help. So I may say, hey, Sequoia, let me talk this out with you. Am I being hard on myself? It's okay to do that. But that has been kind of like that ongoing challenge for me, because I know I can get in that circle of, why, Amanda, why?
Yeah, I agree. I think, it's hard to deal with failure, but it's also, what helps me sometimes is realizing how, no matter the level, people are just so hard on themselves to be perfect. And I've been in the privilege of working with people, that you think that person is so high up in this industry and knows everything, and they too struggle with moments of insecurity and feeling that they didn't quite achieve what they'd hoped. And that helps sometimes, just to realize that it never goes away. Even if you're sort of CEO of a major corporation, you still feel a moment of imposter syndrome sometimes, and that's okay. And I think how I deal with it is just going back to where we started, with balance, and making sure that work isn't my whole life. And I have 2 beautiful daughters, and I have 4 great dogs, and I have a wonderful husband, and going back and remembering what matters and that it's going to be okay is sort of what helps me snap out of it.
I think those are awesome responses, and I feel very similarly. I know I am my own worst critic and enemy, and I was really tough on myself, particularly early in my career. And I think it's important to reflect back on that to try to learn and grow and change. I'm a lot more gentle on myself when I do fail, and I've never ever felt any like scary professional failure. And I think part of it is like finding folks to talk to, whether it's a manager you trust or someone else, because usually they can help you just see with clearer eyes that, you know, it's not you, it's nothing to take personally, and they can really just open your headspace, I think, if you are feeling really down about a specific failure. But what I also love is to just recount like hilarious, epic failure stories. And one of the things I do in some of my team meetings is I start out with a fail story, and some of them involve like, oh, I typoed a word in Excel and it became like a swear word, and I emailed it out to the whole company. And it's just those things like you laugh about it, and it's great to just reflect on failures and what may feel really like raw and personal in the moment. Given time, I think you look back and you think, I learned, I grew, and sometimes some of them are just really funny, and I love to find humor in the situation.
My kind of girl, I do too. It's like if you can't laugh at yourself, I just don't know. It's like, why so serious? If y'all remember that movie, I think that's really important. And for me, I started my actual therapy journey because of work failure, and it actually taught me a lot of areas I was kind of failing in life. But my therapist really helped me deal with the emotions. It really helped me. You know, you can talk to those managers. Some people have been blessed with great ones. Some of us, we have been cursed with bad ones, and that, you know, that vent turns into something else. So for me, therapy, journaling, whatever kind of therapy, I don't care if you ride horses, walk, or just go to a sauna, but kind of having that moment to decompress for yourself and reflect for yourself in a space where it's like I can deal with my emotions. I am safe. I'm not harmed. I'm okay. I just failed in this. I think helps alleviate some of that pressure that you talked about. And that too was earlier in my career. Okay, so y'all are women who are all parents. We talked about that before, and y'all know I'm not a parent, but I'm a proud auntie. And sometimes when my mind is just in a different place, I'm feeling kind of crappy about something, it does impact how I show up for my family. So would love to hear, has that impacted your family at all? Have anyone had to kind of pull you to the side? And I'm not saying talk to us about your marital counseling or nothing like that, not weird. But as a whole, your family being whatever that unit is, has failure impacted family? And if so, would you like to share a little bit about that?
I can go. Go ahead. I have almost a funny reversal story I'll tell. So sometimes I would go home and kind of gripe about failure, you know, to my 5-year-old if she was listening, now 6-year-old, or my husband. And one day I noticed my 5-year-old, now 6, I keep saying 5, I'm sorry. She's 5 in my heart, but she loves to draw. She's just like a self-artist, self-starter, but she really sometimes gets super critical with herself, and she'll get so sad, like, my unicorn doesn't look perfect, it's not the right color. And I realize my reaction is, oh my gosh, this is beautiful, or it's okay, the mistakes, that's what makes art beautiful, and it's okay to make a mistake. And I realized I wasn't always living that culture, and that was kind of a wake-up moment for me. Like, I need to keep instilling to my family, it's okay to make a mistake, it's okay to fail, and I can't be two-faced and like complain about it and then simultaneously tell my daughter that, you know, it's okay to fail. And just that lesson for me, I've taken it to heart. And the same goes for PowerPoint slides, right? We all mess up and use a different color that could be better, and I think it's a great life lesson.
I think one of them, it goes back to me to balance. So when I was working at J&J, it was a very demanding culture. I was recently married. I worked all of the time, into the night. It was getting to the point where it was really affecting my health. Like, we couldn't have a baby. And that's when I made the decision to leave the company, to go find another place that supposedly offered better balance. And this is where I learned that lesson of, it's not the place, it's me. You know, I had to make those changes in myself and sort of decide what was more important. And it worked out, thankfully. I have two beautiful daughters, but it goes back to that. It was a great lesson. Like, now I'm very much a stickler for, I turn off my notifications. I put my phone away on the weekends. I put my phone away at 6:30 at night so my daughters don't see me constantly on my phone. I make it a point that if I don't get finished, then the next day is going to come, the work's still going to be there. And really, really pushing hard for that balance. It's not always possible, but that is what I learned, and it came at, and I loved my job at J&J. I still have so many colleagues and so many friends, and I wish I had known how to say no without having to leave the job. Even though I love the other places I've been, but it would have been nice had I known that earlier in my career, that it's okay to say no.
And thank you for vulnerably sharing that. I'm sure several people may resonate with that story. All right, so I just always like to touch on that because you just never know. For the Beyonce fans, I don't know if anybody in here likes Beyonce, but she talks about a little bit of what you spoke about with how it was impacting her physical health, just overworking, if y'all saw the Homecoming documentary. And there's a whole segment of when she talks about Coachella and being vegan, like hardcore vegan, like raw vegan, eat vegan, wear vegan, all this stuff that was completely, she's from freaking Texas. Like, she's not of that lifestyle. And she essentially almost killed herself putting on Coachella, which is arguably one of the greatest performances in Coachella's history, but at what cost? And she spoke about, miscarriages and marital issues. Hello, Lemonade album, right? But I think that's one of the bigger examples where we see these ladies going through similar things, but it's really just what we do as humans, hyper performers and arguably perfectionists or recovering perfectionists. All right, so moving on. Now, what about your team? So your family is what deals with all the true you, but the team deals with your professional true you. How have you been able to push through failure and simultaneously lead your team to success? Are there any leadership principles that you have on it, or even physical practices that you do once you and or your team fails at something?
Yeah, and in my experience, when it comes to like, okay, we've experienced a failure, I really take it on as a challenge for the team. I'm like totally opposite with how I am with myself. Like, I'm like, no, it's okay. I try and empower them. I wish I could listen to myself in that sense, but it hurts for me to see them be down on themselves. And so I try and figure out, okay, let's talk through it. What's the lesson? What can we figure out? But like, how can we empower ourselves to completely flip the situation around, that when we come with a new solution, it's even better. Like, people don't even remember that failure. And I think I attribute it to not just like my leadership with my team, but also working at very innovative companies. And so in those, cultures, failure is okay, and fail fast, so then you can quickly come up with the best solution. But having that culture there and then making sure you live it as a leader has just been what I've lived by.
Yeah, I think part of the fail fast, which is absolutely right, like there's nothing more painful than a team failing slow, is as a leader to be on the watch out and check in with people if you sense something's not going right, and just having that open, candid conversation. And I think for every failure, it's not really a failure, because you can always look back and identify where things went wrong, and really empowering folks to share that knowledge with other teams so the same failure or mistake isn't making, I think just really, really helps. And so I think as a good leader, just building that really speak up, open, transparent culture where people can feel comfortable bringing failures, and again, feeling empowered to fail. Just like the panel says, no one is perfect. I would say, I'm not sure I would want someone on my team that would never admit a failure. And so it's powerful to talk about it and to learn from it.
Yeah, I would say same, very similar stories. I think open and continuous feedback is key too. When I first got to Warner, they changed the feedback process to be one that was called chat. And it basically, the concept was no formal mid-years, no formal end of years, just constant feedback throughout the year when you see things. And I have to admit, coming from like the Proctors of the world, at first it was like, this is crazy, it's too loosey-goosey, we need like mid-years, we need end of year. And I realized that I actually love it now because it really encourages constant conversation, like what could we have done better, and addressing feedback right away versus waiting, avoiding confrontation and not giving people the feedback that they need to continue to succeed along the way. So I think that culture of continuous feedback is really important, and I really see it as a responsibility as a leader to help people sort of get over potential derailers so they can continue to grow and they can continue to contribute versus waiting till the mid-year to surprise somebody with something they could have been working on from the beginning. So that's been a really wonderful lesson and a great culture of continuous feedback.
I love that. Okay, I love that. I remember a manager one time held on to something for like a quarter and docked my bonus. I'm like, girl, why didn't you say anything 3 months ago? I would have fixed it. But I do want to throw something to y'all that I did not prepare. So if you do not feel comfortable answering this, please, we can move on. But we talked a lot about diversity for myself. I found that my failures were judged a little harsher, where I could make something, maybe I transposed a number, which it does happen. We're all humans. It's like, oh my God, the end of the world. But then some of my counterparts that didn't look like me, it's like, oh, they just made a mistake. Has that happened in your career at all? And if so, for the people leaders in the team, are there any tips as to judging failure a little less biased based on all the biases we have, not just racial, but ability, et cetera? Does anybody have a perspective on that? I know I threw it at you.
In a way. So I wouldn't say like where I was comparing it to my peers, but more of like what I put on myself. And so in a lot of situations, I've been the only Black person to be in that role, the only Black woman to be in that role, one of the youngest people to be in that role. And so I put that pressure on myself where it's like, okay, I can't make a mistake because I am the first one, but then also I want more to come after me. And that's like my dream and passion, where it's like, how do I uplift more people to be in these roles? So when I get into a leadership role, I don't make it about myself per se. I'm thinking about all the future people. And so when I make a mistake, I am concerned about really turning that back around because I don't want that to be representative of the people that will come after me.
I'm trying to think of, it's hard to know as a person of color if people were judging me more harshly. I think to the point that you judge yourself, or you already give yourself a really hard time. So I don't know if there's a moment where I've known that that's happened to me. I hope not. But I don't know if I've ever felt that I don't know if it's me thinking, are they judging me more harshly because I'm a person of color, or if they realize that bias. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think it's really critical to not apply cookie cutter assumptions. I've definitely worked with certain managers in the past where if I made a mistake or did something, it always kind of flows back to them like, well, I wouldn't have done it this way or something. And you realize I'm not following this same career path as my manager, or maybe you are. But I think it's really important, especially if you're in a leadership role, to give everyone grace and space. We're all on our own journeys, and to never make that assumption, well, I would never have done that, therefore this person shouldn't have even tried this in the first place. I think that's really dangerous thinking. It's a really great thought-provoking question, and I think we all have to be really aware whether it's conscious or unconscious bias.
Awesome. I'm so glad y'all answered my little toss-up, because I did not ask these ladies that, but I know we had a lot of folks talking about diversity and recruitment. So I'm just very passionate about you. So you got the diversity, now what? And one of those things I've just personally experienced. All right, so what I want to know as we round out this panel is the failures that y'all talked about, like the very first question, if you could do it all over. And be real. I know we love the cookie cutter answer. Oh my God, I don't regret anything. Some people do. Is yours cookie cutter? All right, so we're going to go to the cookie cutter answer. So if you could do it all over again, would you choose the same failure, or would you do anything different?
I I honestly would, because it's led to success for me. So I can't, like if I didn't go through something difficult, of course you would say, okay, I hope I would never do that again. But I think about the outcomes that came where I was able to flip it around or something got better along the way. Whether it was in that moment, 5 months, 2 years later, like I'm able to connect back to this is why that happened. Here's a lesson I learned from it. So I will be that cookie cutter person. I accept it.
Well, that's why you're at Amazon and I am not. Because listen, what about you, ladies?
I would say I'm going to give a work example that a lot of us have been in research in situations where we want to hire the very best big vendor to support our efforts, like a big tracking vendor or those big names in research that are offering sort of the best capabilities, the best analytics. And we've all been seduced by sort of the sell of a large research company. And there have been times where we, instead of sticking with the small boutique firm that actually killed themselves to work on your project, you get seduced by the large vendor. And I think that's something that I think about a lot more now, and a lot of my team's here, and we're suffering through many large vendors that drive us crazy because we were seduced by the big analytic promise and they don't deliver. So I think constantly remember, it goes in cycles, obviously, but constantly remembering that sometimes it's the small vendor that's willing to really kill themselves for your business and provide that above and beyond value is better than sort of the shiny new thing in research. So I think I'd try to pick the small vendors more if I were to do it again.
Well, the small vendors, we love it here. So thanks, girl.
I think for the failure I originally described, sort of the trying to force fit a database to use with this market research experimentation, I would accept that. I don't think I would ask for a do-over, but where I would ask for a do-over to change something is I vividly recall I had like one meeting with a pretty senior person and I was feeling pretty stressed out because I was going to present this to the CMO of Microsoft, and she was asking a lot of really hard, thought-provoking questions, and I interpreted her questions as wanting to be like changes, and I thought, oh my gosh, there's just not enough time to do this. And I think I got a little defensive and aggressive in the meeting, and I had a chat with someone after because it didn't sit right. And I realized I was making assumptions. She was not at all in that time and space to ask me to make changes. She was just asking open questions to probably help me make my presentation better. And if I had to do it again, I'd say always go into whether it's a meeting or a conversation open-minded. And if you find yourselves having assumptions, it's really important to sometimes nip those in the bud.
I can listen to y'all talk all day, but we only have a few minutes. So I'm going to give y'all the last question. And this is especially for the newbies in the room. And it doesn't mean newbies to research by age, but maybe by experience or maybe by job change. Maybe you grew up in leadership. Maybe you said, hey, I want to take a few steps back. But wherever the newbies are in the room, I personally had a mission this year to talk to people about self-deprecation. Like, enough is enough. I do think there's a fine line between, okay, things happen, you failed, but then just doing bad things and then you fail, right? So I would like to round us out with, what advice would you give to a newbie? Things that you may be like, yeah, do this, or really, please, for the love of God, or whoever you believe in, don't do that. What are some of those self-deprecating behaviors that you may give, like a newbie just saying, hey, I don't think you should do that? And I know earlier Amanda was talking about, that balance, saying no. A couple of y'all, actually all of y'all have said in your own way, saying no, setting boundaries, not taking work too personal. Any other self-deprecating behavior that you think newbies do, or even from a women's perspective?
I'm not sure if it's self-deprecating necessarily, but one thing I would encourage new people to do, which sometimes feels really uncomfortable, is just ask questions. I think especially whether you're in a room with senior leaders, it's an acronym you don't know, I think it's really important to speak up and ask the question. And I'd also say from the self-deprecation angle, don't be hard on yourself. And if you're feeling hard on yourself, definitely seek outside perspective. Sometimes it's powerful to just ask for feedback from colleagues, and I think usually you'll hear really valuable, positive things, and it's always like nice to give yourself a boost and just don't be hard on yourselves. We're our own worst critics. oftentimes, especially when we're new in a role?
I would say that in addition to sort of the boundaries, which is one of the biggest lessons I've had, is also accept change, meaning I've been lucky enough to rotate into different companies and within companies rotate into new assignments. And there were times when I really resisted it. And I'll remember, Vera knows, at Mattel, we were both at Mattel, and I had a boss who I had mastered this one category that I had been in for a while and delivered this big study, and I was like, I know this category now. And it was something that wasn't familiar to me. It was boys' action figures. And I had mother of daughters, a girl. I never played with action figures. And it took me forever to really feel like I understood the drivers and the need states of that category. Finally got there. And as I delivered the biggest study I'd done, my boss switched me over to Barbie. And I remember feeling like, what? Like, I just learned this. And I finally have it. And I understand how this business works. And he said, this is exactly why it's the moment for you to switch, because now you won't rest on your laurels. You will continue to push yourself forward. And it was a hard lesson at first. And then I went on to do, and learn amazing things in the Barbie world. And he was right. And it was a great lesson, continuing to push yourself. Just when you get comfortable, don't be afraid of change.
Yeah, I would just round it out and saying like self-awareness. It's just really important to kind of understand yourself more and more. I find in a lot of situations where people can get so tapped into the situation that they're not holding themselves accountable. So any chance where you can say, okay, how do I improve my self-awareness? How do I make sure I don't make these same mistakes again? How did I actually get here? I think that would be helpful. So, no word there.
I love that. And I'm going to round us out with piggybacking off of you. Oh my God, did I just say piggybacking? It's like, I hate that word. But I will also say industry awareness. When I was kind of like, young, I'm still a hothead, don't let it fool you. But when I was a little bit younger in my career, I had a lot of strong and wrong opinions, or strong and right, but just positioned differently. So I definitely think for the newbies, get to know the industry as a whole, kind of what is normal, what's abnormal, before you just start trying to wreck stuff or wreck yourself. So thanks, y'all, so much. Give these gals a good old hand. All right, so I know we are ready to partake in whatever you would like, alcoholic and non-alcoholic beverages, but to be dismissed, we need one question, all right? Okay, ooh, that was good. We need to do that all the time. You got the mic? All right.
Okay, so you guys, is this working?
Yes.
There we go. You talked a lot about, at the beginning, about like work-life balance and mental health, but do you guys have any examples, or have you had any time where you felt like, maybe your internal clients or other people that you were working with maybe didn't hold themselves to like that same like boundary, and maybe you had to like manage them in a way,
Many examples. I've had managers that are intense about the work, and it really is about pushing hard with the no, sort of pushing hard with does this really have to be done on this date? Do you really need this? And we even had agreements on the team where we wouldn't commit to a date anymore. Like we wouldn't, if somebody reached out and said, I need this information, okay, we can get it to you in a week. We agreed on the team that we wouldn't do that, and instead we would say, when do you ideally need this? And I'll see if I can get it to you on that date. And that simple thing has changed things. But yes, I think everyone's always thinking that they need it sooner than they do. And sometimes they hedge to get it from you so that they can themselves do something with it and give themselves time to work on it. So I've found that there's always more time, and it's very rare when it's truly needed in that timeline. So it's about pushing back and saying no.
I love that. And I tell people all the time, like with that too, you can always change the deliverable. Not trying to be funny, and maybe this is a bad thing, but for me, if you want something now, and you're putting my feet to the fire, I can get you something now, but it's just not gonna be at the level that you would expect a week out. If you're gonna put me to the fire, you know what? You're right, client, that's getting on my nerves and probably don't pay most of our bills, but I'm gonna just change my deliverable and my expectation. I'm gonna communicate it to them. And in my experience as a researcher, 9 times out of 10, they come back and they're like, oh, well, yeah, we do want you to work on this. What time do you need? So that's been a tip for me. One last question before we go. Oh, we got more questions. All right, so we got 2 in the front, and then I think we will finish it up so we can go have a little bit more fun.
Thank you. We started talking about the work-life balance and work-life integration. And in the past 2-3 years, especially for parents, the work-life balance has been hard because you had, I don't know about you, I have 3 kids and they're all school age. So I had them at home. We had to homeschool them. They had to sit in front of us, in front of the computer. So some of the best practices work when you really, truly can put that boundary and know that, okay, I'm working until 5 and then with my family. Can you share some of the things that you've learned in the last 2 to 3 years that helped you through that?
I'll share a quick example, and I actually took this from someone at Microsoft. It was kind of a financial leader, and I just always admired her. And I was sending her an email one day, and I noticed she had this out-of-office response, which was so powerful. Is like, I am working on schooling my 2 kids, and like really humanized the situation, described her kids, and she's like, these are my working hours, and I will only respond within my working hours. And she was drawing a firm line, and it was also like thrilling to me, seeing someone so many levels above me like have the power to do that. And I know that others saw that, and they started taking their own boundaries more seriously and really just communicating it out to like anyone who listened. And I thought that was a great way to do that.
I think, the pandemic, I will say, has been great to prove that we don't need to be in an office to show that we can work really hard. And I think I'll never go back to an office if I don't have to. And as a working mom, even though a lot of the team is here, I have never worked harder than in the pandemic because those commute times got replaced with work time. But still somehow, as a mom, I felt more balance because I could take those 30 minutes and hug my child when they got home from school. I could still make them a snack. I could still walk over from like my home office garage and walk to the kitchen and make dinner at 6 o'clock. So I think I learned over the last 2 years that flexibility is the key to happiness and work. And we have to protect that at all costs as sort of employees and leaders and really let people show up how they want to show up. They'll still work hard.
I'm just starting my family, so I'm just like taking notes from everyone. So.
It's a great talk. Thank you very much for sharing everything. I've been on the supplier side for like 25 years, and so I've seen a lot of different clients and different attitudes and styles. I just feel like it's interesting. When you get out of your Uber, the Uber driver rates you and you rate the driver. Are we going to get to a point in enterprises where, where you rate each other internally so that you can encourage good behavior and you can report behavior that isn't ideal? I don't know. Does that happen in any of your organizations where you're able to give that kind of peer-to-peer feedback to make sure that you're trying to create an environment that's positive, but that avoids long-term bullying and bad performers?
Yeah, I'll just speak to kind of like the review process, like the annual review in our space where we actually get feedback from our peers. Of course, you're going to get feedback from your managers, but like that is the best, like the people you get to work with. And it's really helpful. And even prior to working at Amazon, I participated in like, I think it's a 360 review where you get feedback from everyone. And that was hard, but it's hard. I mean, it was really tough. And I was trying to identify who said this, but it was so helpful and it made me ask for feedback more. So even if there's not a mechanism in place, where I work or what I do, I just ask for it, And then if I'm managing a team, like I ask the people that I'm leading to give me feedback. Like I'm not invisible, like this isn't about Amanda. It's like, how do we make this a better environment for you? So people can give me feedback and say, hey, you need to improve that. So just being open-minded with that.
Yeah, I think it's important to ask for feedback, and also some of the companies I've worked for, we do have feedback, and I think it's a little tricky because many of the systems, I think unlike the one you described, Amanda, it's not blind, but I found that people are honestly transparent, and like one of the things in the tool I've worked with, people can write a little note to you before they ask for feedback, and just, they're like, I don't want to know about what went right. Like, I honestly want your opinion on how I can improve. And I think especially I do the same thing for the people I respect, and the feedback is so good. And like, without understanding how we're perceived by others, and especially, if we made the wrong move, like accidentally and didn't know it, it's really important to capture that.
I think, I don't think there's tolerance for that behavior, I guess. So where I've been lucky to work at values-driven companies where values are really important for them to be stated, and if they're not stated, then you create the values on your team, and basically we don't put up with behavior that is demeaning to others. And there's a lot of focus on D&I, which I think is wonderful. It's made the conversation so much more front and center and a priority. And so I think it's about just addressing things as they happen, not letting them fester. And honestly, as a leader, just not putting up with it. It's just like, we're not going to tolerate that kind of behavior, and maybe gravitating towards companies where that is the culture.
Yeah, definitely. And last thing on that is there is a company for everything. So I have been very privileged to work at Comcast, and they had an amazing rewards program, but also I forgot the name of the company, and they also didn't pay for me to be here, so I'm not going to name drop anyways. But their company was a third-party HR complaint system where you could call, and I think it was like Listeners on Call maybe was the company, but you could call and make an anonymous complaint about things that may not have gone well, and they were completely agnostic to the company, and it made it where you have to investigate what went on by that third party, and then you bring in internal conversations. So between rewarding accomplishments or mitigating failure, there is a company for it, and I'm sure all of the experts in the room know at least one. So I'm not going to delay us having a little fun anymore. We talked. We were vulnerable. We were sharing. I hope y'all enjoyed this panel as much as I did. Megan, Tanya, Amanda, thank you, ladies, so much.